All right, well, welcome everyone. This is our third alumni rebound session. Excited to be here with Emma Springer today to talk about her journey and her life. And we're going to jump right in, ask if Emma can tell everyone a little bit about herself. So, where you're from, what your major was, when you graduated, what you're doing now, whatever you want to share.
Sure. Yeah. So, hi, everyone. My name is Emma Springer. I graduated in May of 2020. I studied communications with a sport communication minor while at JMU. I am currently living at home in Standardsville, Virginia, north of Charlottesville, UVA. And I'm doing an internship with Georgetown Athletics doing video editing right now. So I've been glad to kind of have something to keep me busy during this, kind of crazy, unusual time for post grads.
So, Emma, if it's okay, we'll jump right in with some of the different questions we've come up with. Um, so, you graduated differently than you expected.
Yeah.
Our next class may do the same. We still haven't figured out what to do with graduation in May yet. So, can you take us back to graduation, sort of feeding up to graduation? You weren't here physically, right? Or were you here?
I was not. I was home.
So, take us through like the days up to and then actually graduation day. What was that like? How did you do it? Were you like with all your family with your cap and gown on? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it was different. It was very emotional, honestly. And I think I knew had this taken place as normal at JMU as, many classes have for years now, it would have still been emotional, but I think just because of the finality of it and almost lack thereof in a way, it just leading up to it, I've always been somebody who I feel like I can express myself and kind of sort out my thoughts through like writing. So I like written down something just kind of like of my experience, and like that was helpful, and like shared that with my parents. And yeah, leading up to the day, I mean, I was in touch with my friends, and we were all talking about kind of the different things we were doing, but it kind of just seemed a little anticlimactic, I would say. And then the day of was kind of, chill, just pretty much like any other day. I mean, we did that night watch the different ceremonies via the live streams around my kitchen table, and then I like put on my cap and my gown, and so we sent that picture out to my family, and then so that must have been Friday, I think. And then I think Saturday it was my parents and I, since we only live 45 minutes away, we drove over and just kind of walked around, which was nice. And just kind of did like a little mini tour, I guess, of the campus, and just kind of reflecting back on it all. And that was kind of a nice little conclusion, since I kind of had to be, creating my own in this time. So, but it was hard, and I was upset, and I was a little bit bitter, and then I felt bad feeling bitter because I was like, I have my health, and my parents and my family are healthy and we're safe, and like I still had a great college experience, and I had so many things to be grateful for. But I think because everything just, you flipped a switch and things just totally changed, and you weren't really prepared for it. It was just kind of, trying to feel those emotions as I went and just try and keep everything in perspective. But it definitely like took me a little bit of time to kind of, I guess, get comfortable and just kind of accept the situation as it was. But I think then also in talking with friends who graduated in December, and them also not having the same, finality of everything, that also kind of helped, I think, in my conclusion process of it.
Right. So, Emma, I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's so important for people to sort of know that this is a like graduation is already a thing, like it's already an emotional thing. And then, you're now 8.5 months since
Yeah.
basically. Can you sort of put in context your last semester now within all of your time at JMU? Like, how do you sort of, in the end, one of the things that I've talked to some students about was let's not let the last 8 weeks of what was a 4 year experience change how amazing the first 3 years, one semester, and 8 weeks was. How do you sort of, how do you now look back at the entire JMU experience for yourself?
I still love every single second of it. And I still just think it was the greatest life-changing event thus far, and just so much goes into those 4 years academically, personally, almost professionally. And yeah, I think exactly like you said, you can't really change or alter what that first 3.5 years plus was just because those last 8 weeks looked different and took place differently. Like I still had like my Zoom classes and my professors still made a point to, give their let there be a conclusion and,
Right.
do their regular goodbyes just in a new way. And so, yeah, that last semester, I mean, it was kind of no different than the rest of my experience. It was jam packed up until spring break. And
Right.
then we went and spring break, I spent it with my friends. And then we come back and things change. But I would say that that last semester was still very much everything that the rest of my time was, and just kind of the best of it because I had so many, I at that point was involved in these different things and they had kind of reached these bigger levels. Like with Safe Rides, we had a conference, and so that got to happen. And so I think it was still like I don't have any regrets about any of it, just because I think, and also because it was out of our control.
Sure. So let me ask you maybe a slightly different question. As a member of the class of 2020, you've not had a graduation yet. What do you hope happens for you all as a class? What do you want to have happen for you as a class?
I know I would still like graduation, and I've talked with some friends, and some I think are just they've moved on from it, and they're either now in graduate school or they're in their job or whatever it is for them is their next step. And I think they're just kind of moved past it. But it's a large deal. I would, I think I'd still like to see it, and I'd also like to see it just for the hundreds of first generation college students that we have. It's like, it's such an achievement not to be minimized. And, with or without a graduation ceremony, it is still an achievement and it's this great accomplishment. But I don't know. I think there's just something to be said about the finality of it and walking across the stage and seeing your professors and President Alger and all of that. But besides that, I'm not sure. I think it was a unique learning experience for a lot of us, that, like it or not, we can take into our next journeys. Um, but yeah, I think I have kind of, I don't want to say like moved on from it, but for a while I was holding on to emotions. I think now, as we kind of get farther and farther away from it, it just, doesn't seem, the final ceremony doesn't seem as significant as it did in May.
Right. Okay. Good to hear. So now I'm really going to change directions.
Okay.
Um, so let's talk about, you're about to graduate. Let's talk about jobs. Like you have an internship now. Like when you graduated, did you have that internship? Were you still trying to figure it out? Like, can you talk about that sort of the final semester? You're trying to figure out what you're going to do next. You're around some people that have jobs and they've had jobs for 7 months and they're all very excited. And you're like, I'm really excited for you. Can you stop talking about it? Like, can you just talk through that sort of journey for you and sort of the career stuff and where you go from here?
Sure. So I wasn't really focused my thinking on searching for jobs or anything because I think I thought, like, while I was at school for that last semester, because I guess my game plan was just to figure it out after spring break. And then obviously things changed. We all came home. So then my game plan was like, okay, well, like, let's just get through these last few weeks of classes, things like that. As I got closer towards the end of the semester, I started to like research different internships and job opportunities. I realized that I really enjoyed my time spent that I did volunteering and doing my practicum with the video production unit at the athletic communication office. So I was like, okay, that seems really interesting to me. Maybe I'll go in that direction. So I started applying, and I think actually it was the day of our graduation. that I heard back from Georgetown in response to my application that was submitted. So that was cool. I like kind of like just lost it when I got that email because it was just an emotional day and I finally heard back from somebody.
Sure.
Um, so then on June 8th, I think is when I figured out that, okay, that's what I'm going to be doing. This is like my next step. It was kind of in limbo, honestly, for June and July. Like, would I eventually be moving up there? Would this be like an in-person gig? Is this remote? It was determined then that it would be remote. And so it's kind of a part-time. It's 10 to 20 hours a week, just depending upon work. And obviously sports look much different and some sports aren't happening. And so that's also been a unique experience, not exactly again what we thought it would look like. So I'm doing that currently, and I've been able to learn a lot. It's definitely different learning via Zoom calls because this also isn't an area of expertise for me. Like I have some experience, but I don't know that much. So that has also been a little bit of a learning curve. But yeah, so this will be up in May, my internship with them. So I'm currently, trying to look for jobs since this, the job search is a long process or can be.
Sure.
And just kind of looking also in the video production realm, but also in like community relations and community outreach, since that I think was another area that really interests me and I have like passion for. And I guess the nice thing about having all this time is it's allowed me to kind of reflect on the things that, I really want to pour energy into and what do I get enjoyment out of as far as, quote unquote work. And so, yeah, I'm still in the middle of figuring out, what that next step looks like. I kind of told myself that if I don't have anything by May, that I'm just going to pick a place and go, because by that point it'll have been a year since graduating that I've been home, and at some point like the game just needs to start. But I'm really hoping that something happens before then, because I have no clue where I want to go, so I'd rather just a job decide that for me.
So I was going to ask you about that. So let's talk about the living at home thing. How has that gone? What was that transition like? What are the rules like? Are you paying rent? Like, I'm sure for some of our current seniors that are getting ready to graduate, they've been home a lot. While they've been in college, they've been home a lot. So can you just talk us through sort of what's that been like and how have you and your family managed that? Just whatever comes to mind for you.
I'm just really grateful. I'm in a really good situation with my parents, and I know, not a lot of kids or students have that all the time. Unfortunately, I'm really close with my parents. I'm an only child, so I don't have any siblings. Um, and so it's always just kind of been me and them. And usually people ask, "Oh, what's that like?" But it's all I've known. We're a close knit family. Um, so for me, it's been really good. They've been, the times that maybe I've gotten emotional with graduation or just with the struggles of, job searching and not hearing responses or hearing responses or whatever it may be. They've just been really supportive. They've tried to kind of just let me figure it out on my own. And when I ask for advice, they'll give it, and, they'll lend their support. But they've just been really great and just kind of letting me live. But at the same time, given the circumstances that we're all here because of COVID, I really haven't been doing a lot. I wouldn't say there's a lot of rules per se, but that's also just because that like I'm very much, taking precautions about this virus. It's not that they have to tell me, oh, you can't go X, Y, and Z or do X, Y, and Z because of the virus. Like, I don't do a whole lot, just because we're just trying to keep healthy, and it's just so uncertain. So I've really been grateful, but at the same time, like I'm definitely ready to go. Like if a job came like tomorrow, I'd say yes, okay, great. Like when do you want me to move? Because I'm still ready to start the game, and everybody wants to move out of their parents' house at some point. But I've been grateful that while I'm home, it has been a good situation for me, and it hasn't been like an added stress.
Okay. That's important, I think. Well, let me ask you this then. Can you again, imagining that there are people that are about to graduate and
Right.
some, who knows, may move home. What advice would you give them about the moving home process?
Um, I wouldn't. I would say don't try and look too far ahead and start getting in your head of I'm going to be home for this many weeks or this many months and it's going to look like this and blah 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 blah. And because I think even with myself, I sometimes project and it just kind of can be this downward spiral that's like not healthy because like half of the time what we worry about doesn't even come true. And for students going home, like maybe some of your worries very much are real, like and they will come to be, but I think communication's important. Just trying to express your feelings in whatever way that is. If that is just you journaling and that's good enough of a relief and expression for you for now, then that's good. But if it's talking with the ones that you share your space with, whether it's your siblings or your parents or whoever you're living with, but they've never been in this situation. They're living it with us and they're trying to support with us, but they were 21, 22, 23 and their life looked however it looked. They don't know exactly the emotions that we're feeling. So I just think trying to take it day by day and for me, keeping in perspective just all of your blessings. If you have your health, if you are fortunate to have a roof over your head and food on the table, like it's a tough time for so many people, but I think trying to keep that perspective in mind and any chance you can to get outside and get some fresh air and sunshine, I think it was a big help for me, just being able to breathe that in and take a walk. And it's such a mood booster. And so I think, yeah, I my biggest piece of advice I think would say just to not project too much what life will look like in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, because all it takes is one job application and one response and you're there. You just don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's so true. I remember I graduated, had a summer job working in conferencing at JMU, and then that ended and I didn't have a job. And
Mm-hmm.
so I moved home and, I sort of had a hope that I wouldn't be there very long, but I had no idea.
Right.
And luckily, I came back to campus just to check in and all that, and checked in with people that were doing the hiring, and they offered me the job while I was there. So I, in the end, only lived home for about 2 to 3 weeks, which still I think felt like a long time for my mom because
Mm-hmm.
I was still living the college life a little more than she would have liked with my music and everything else. But I had no
Yeah.
idea. I could have been there a year. I could have been there a day. I was there, it was just under a month, I think. So yeah, I think it's always hard when people sort of put, well, I'm only going to live home for this amount of time. And then when that doesn't happen, you're like mad at everybody else. It's like, that was an unrealistic plan.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so I think a couple more questions. So how, well, have you, and if you have, how have you stayed in touch with JMU friends? One of the biggest things that I talk to people about all the time is that like it's just harder to keep in touch with people because you don't live there, you don't have the roommates, you don't have the people that live in the apartment next door. So have you stayed in touch, and how have you gone about staying in touch with some people, and those that you haven't, what's that been like?
Yeah. My core group I've stayed in touch with, and social media I definitely think can be like a double-edged sword. It can be beneficial and then it can just really not. But through like Snapchats or through texting, and sometimes like maybe I'll just like see a picture of something and so then I'll just send it to whoever it made me think of. And it doesn't have to be this whole long drawn out conversation. But just kind of like letting people know that you're thinking of them kind of goes a long way, because then I think sometimes people don't know if they should reach out or well, we haven't talked and this and that. Um, but for me, I think it's been good. It's also just been, you know, I feel like regular post grad life, given no COVID, I would be taking more frequent trips to visit those like in close-ish proximity within a few hours.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple friends like sporadically, but not very often. And I think those that I haven't really spoken to as much, it is. It's a little bit different. And I don't know if like maybe homecoming events, like in different yearly gatherings would change that a little bit. But I definitely think like, social media is good to kind of check in at times. Like I've definitely seen people, oh, like, hey, you got this job, so then I'll reach out to them, and that's really cool and congratulations. But I'll definitely go like a while without picking up the phone, and then when I do, it'll be like an hour-long conversation. But it doesn't feel like any sort of guilt for me that, oh, well, we haven't talked, because we just kind of pick up where we left off. But yeah, I think it's still like a constant navigating, trying to figure out, how this works, because you go from, and I think that was my biggest kind of concern as a senior, just like looking to the future, was I'm going to go from living in a place where everybody that I love and care about is within like a 10-mile radius.
Right.
And now we're going to spread out all over. And like, what's that going to look like? And I think I'm still trying to figure out what that's going to look like. Wherever I move to, maybe friends will be there, maybe they won't, but maybe it'll provide a chance, for trips or visits. So it's been interesting for sure.
Sure. Okay. So Emma, last question, and then
Okay.
we'll open it up if there's anything else on your mind that you want to share with the world. My last question is, you are now standing in front of yourself a year ago, February 11th of 2020. What do you want yourself to know? Like, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? What advice would you give yourself? If it's too weird for it to be you, then it's a current senior who's sitting there today just wondering what the world's going to look like. They're graduating into COVID just like you did. Just what advice would you give yourself or anyone who's right now looking at graduation in, 3 months or so?
That's good. I think that's still kind of even tricky for me to answer, but I guess looking back, February 11th, a year ago, I was involved in Safe Rides, and we were less than a month away from hosting the national conference, Safe Ride Programs United. So that was just kind of a lot, and it was just kind of go, go, go up until that point. So I guess I would say, try and be present in all those moments. Although I think I had good reminders from other friends and other people in Safe Rides and outside to do that. So I think that was good. But then, a year ago, Emma, looking forward to graduation, I think maybe not trying to place so much emphasis and significance on like the tangible aspects that come with being a senior and graduating, and all those final like traditions that usually take place, and just realizing that everything you've accomplished and all the growth that's occurred is no less important. It's not diminished anymore. It may feel like it, and that's okay. And to kind of, I think it's important to give in to whatever you're feeling and to talk about it, and just express yourself in whatever way, because I think this is a lot to be going through. People their thoughts are school, and it's post grad, and their families and their friends, and maybe health, and who knows what's going on. So I think, try not to get too freaked out about the future, because it's changing every day. And I think maybe had I known that, it would have, calm me down a little bit more at times when I didn't know what things look like. Because last winter break, I remember I saw this like goldfish commercial. It was about this little goldfish kid, and it was a snow day, and snow days are the best with their parents. And I saw that, and it was late at night, and I just like lost my mind. And I was like, I'm never going to have another snow day. I'm never going to be home, because I didn't know COVID would exist. And so I was like, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to go. And now it's like, okay, well, like, joke's on you. You've been home for like 9.5 months or so. So I think like not just trying to project everything into the future, because you don't know how it's going to play out. And however it does is how it's supposed to be at that time. And it's meant to teach you something, and you'll use those experiences to take you forward. But just trying to enjoy, the moments that you have with the ones around you, and then, just embracing whatever comes next.
Well, Emma, that's awesome. I'm open if you have anything else you want to share, but if not, I think that was a great way to end. I appreciate your perspective about it. And I think that, your story will resonate with a lot of people who aren't sure what they're going to do after, but have found their way and are wondering what's happening. I think everyone assumes there's this like magic path that you walk after graduation, and you're making the path as you go. And I appreciate that you've made such a great path, and your perspective about the last 9.5 months, I think, is really great. But anything else you want to share with folks?
Um, no, I mean, I think your questions were good. I probably sound like I'm this emotional crying girl all the time, but it's a lot. And I think like the other day I kind of got upset in the job search, and I told my mom, I was like, I'm sorry, like I'm emotional. And she's like, you're really not. I think you are more, because, it's just, it's difficult, and you're just figuring it out as you go. And I think COVID, no COVID, you're figuring it out as you go anyways, but there's just all these different extra added-ins that change the situation a little bit. But no, I appreciate you having me on. I've been kind of enjoyed talking and reflecting on all this.
Well, and if it helps, I think you sounded human, not emotional.
Yeah.
Because it's a human existence and a human path you've been on. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't apologize for it all. I thought it'll mean a lot to other people as they hear it.
Yeah. Good. Well, I hope so. So thank you.
Good. Well, thanks for making the time.